Cool. So we're live? We're good? Cool. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the third day of INO CON. Today we have Áureo Baqueiro, an extremely successful, talented, awesome Berkeley graduate. He's paved his way through the industry, specifically in the Mexican Latin pop scene, working with a lot of international artists such as Thalia, Patti Cantú, Sin Bandera, Alejandro Fernandez, Paulina Rubio. The list goes absolutely on and on. Grammy nominations, Grammy wins, producer of the year, just incredible. Auro, thank you for being here. Yeah, let's start a little bit with, for those who don't know you or those who do, your history. Where did you find music, and kind of like what took you to Berkeley and to where you are now, you know?
Well, first of all, it's great to be with all of you guys. Hope everybody is safe and having a great year. So happy to be part of this conference. Um, well, where I start, I started in music at a very young age. I always was passionate about music as a fan, and then as a player, I started playing drums. And then early on, like around 7 years old, I started writing songs, right? I kind of like discovered that I had melodies in my head that were not in someone else's. And so my journey, I guess it started like everyone else, forming your bands, writing your songs. At the time when I was young, it was the only way to record it was just with a handheld tape recorder. And so that's the way I kind of like recorded my ideas. And then when I finished high school, I decided that I really wanted to be a musician. That's what I wanted to do in my life. And a few friends of mine had already been to Berkeley. I had Berkeley on my mind, but I didn't have at the time the means or the way to do it. So I started playing with professional bands in Mexico as a backup musician, and saved some money from like 4 years of touring, and then decided to venture out into Berkeley. So I landed there. I was basically going to do a 2-year program first, but while I was there, I said no, I need to do the 4-year for sure. Since I started working with and meeting artists before my Berkeley years, I started recording, and I started doing some songwriting for other artists. So I kind of like started making music and kind of like understanding how to make a living in music while I was at Berkeley. Um, I went to Berkeley at 20 years old, 2021. I was playing and writing songs in Mexico for like 2 years prior, like 17 to 20 years old.
What
And
did you study?
what did I study?
Yeah.
I at the time it was commercial arranging. I think that right now it's CWP.
Okay.
Uh, I was always a songwriter, and that was kind of like my passion. And so I wanted to learn more about instrumentation, orchestration, and have more knowledge of harmony, and how could I enhance my creative ideas. So I did 4 years of commercial arranging. I did a minor in film scoring, and I graduated as a drummer. My main instrument was a drummer. And I did
Nice.
the 4-year program. I did it in 3 years because I didn't stop during the summers. And then in my last year, I focused on a private piano instructor with a teacher in Boston, and then working on my final project that last year. And while at Berkeley, interacting with different musicians from all over the world that you get a chance to meet, and I was always trying to be as active as possible. Recording, I was always, since I was in the writing program, I was always doing arrangements for brass, strings, trying to get sessions in the studio. And that also kind of like helped prepared me to
Yeah.
pave the way to be a producer, because I really wanted to be my main focus was to be a performing artist, and that's what I wanted to do, just perform my songs. but I've always, you know, as a writer, I love the ranging and I love the creation aspect of it. So little by little, it kind of like started getting the tools and learning the tools of the trade.
Nice. And so you're kind of getting towards the end of your Berkeley career.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of, we have a production program here at in Valencia.
Hmm.
And I was thinking, what was on your mind towards the end? What am I going to do next? What would you suggest maybe to someone who's watching? Kind of
Well,
your next steps.
Well, I mean, as I say, what I wanted to do was to be a recording artist, and
Mm,
so I, at that time, I had that in my mind. I also, and this is more on a philosophical note, I wanted to go to New York. That was like my first idea and start my career there. But then I realized that things for me, you know, the way I perceive music changed so much in my 4 years. Like I was not the same person that came into Berkeley from the one that came out. I mean, I didn't even had any real knowledge about jazz, for example. So in my perspective in music and the way I love music, I understand music changed so much that I started to realize that in Mexico, at least in my view, things musically move very, very slow. And I remember that I used to go back year through year, and it all sounded the same to me. The things that were happening on the street and on the radio. While out in Boston, everything was, you know, every year was something different, and so I kind of felt that there were really great opportunities for me to develop because there were not many different paths and styles of music that were happening, and
yeah.
so that's kind of how I chose to go back to my country. And I started the path of an artist. So I started, you know, knocking doors through friends and trying to meet A&Rs, you know, trying to build up my networking. I really was lucky because on my graduation day, I was sitting next to a girl that her last name is Avaroa, my last name is Baqueiro, so we're just randomly by alphabetic order sitting next to each other, and we never really met through Berkeley, but in the 2 or 3 hours that we were sitting together, we kind of like became good friends. And then she tells me that her brother is Warner's A&R in Mexico. So that kind of like just like, you know, life offered an opportunity there. So I knocked on his door, and as trying to be an artist, I show him my songs, and then he was, you know, developing other artists, and he loved my songs. I say, hey, what? I love this song, but I would like to try with this artist and this artist. So he wasn't really focused on me as an artist, but he opened the door as a songwriter. So I started working with him as a songwriter, and I guess that my approach in general is just because I wanted to be an artist. I wasn't closing myself into just doing that. So the
Yeah.
songwriting opportunity opened up. I did that, and then I had a huge hit with like the first single of that new artist that they were developing. It was my song. So then suddenly I had like, you know, one single here, one single there, and I started, you know, developing even more my songwriting career.
Mm,
At the same time, you know, you start meeting people. I mean, it's just about networking. So you start meeting other songwriters, collaborating, meeting new artists, you know, that need help developing their sound. So I started to be in the studio doing demos for unsigned artists. You know, still trying my path as an artist. Eventually, I got signed to Warner. He eventually paid enough attention to me as an artist, and I was always persistent. And you know what they say, that this is a long run
marathon.
a marathon. Yeah. So it's sometimes the ones who make it are the ones who really stay on path and endure all the craziness that we have to go through and all the hoops that we have to go through. Um, but I think that one big lesson that I learned, I mean, looking back, is that you really never know where the important or the good opportunities for you, if professional opportunities are going to come. So I would say one thing is like always keep your mind open, and not because you want to do something specifically, don't, you know, close yourself into not collaborating in any other way. Even to this day, sometimes sometimes I just sit down and write a song, even though that I'm not gonna produce it or that I'm not completely involved with the project. I would think like, well, I'm the producer, and if I don't produce my music, I could be on that frame of mind. But sometimes just sit down and go back to my songwriting career and collaborate as a songwriter. So, that little by little, like, one door opens the next and one opportunity opens the next. And, you have a successful song, and people start, calling you for songs, and then they listen to your demos, and then they like the demos. So they call you up as hey, why don't you, a few years, well, more than a few years back, there was still the role of the arranger, as a one role that you would get like a guitar and vocals demo, and you would sit down and create an arrangement. So I started doing that, and that evolved into me being in the studio helping the artists perform. Since I am a singer, and I had that experience, and so I gained the trust of the artist. So I started doing some vocal direction, vocal arranging, vocal production, and it was kind of like learning the ropes, like from one corner of production to the other one, and
Kind of just
and
learning every hat that you could wear, and just
exactly. And I was personally, I was always very passionate. Like, I wanted to do it all, and I was passionate about every aspect of making music, from being on stage to nerding out on equipment, and on instruments. So that opened up doors for me, and even to this day, I would say that like songwriting, it's been for me like the steadiest career path in my life. Like, that has always been there from day one. That was my first paycheck was as a drummer, a backup drummer for a band. But I would say that close to that, or next to it, it was my songwriting career, and that has always, sometimes you get highs, sometimes you get lows, but that was always constant. That always kept me economically healthy and creatively healthy. And so, being open to all opportunities, it's important.
That's
um
crazy that's crazy how like the girl sitting next to you was just like that's just like such a fate moment too. That's really cool, and that's so important too, I think. I mean, I mention it to my friends as well all the time. It's your network, and not saying no, just taking the opportunities no matter what, because you never know where they're going to lead you.
yeah, and you always, exactly, and always be ready to jump on anything that happens. I was I I always had this like last minute things that somebody needed to do some programming, and then the guy was doing the programming couldn't do it, and I was not even there to do anything like that, but just jumping at that. Okay, I'll program some drums, or I'll someone needs to help us, or some background vocals need to happen, and there was nobody available, so I would just jump in and create the harmonies and sang them. And so it's your life experience. At the end of the day, it also enriches your experience. It's how
Yeah.
you learn more, because you make mistakes, and always learn from everybody else that's around. It doesn't matter where you are in the scalaphon of inside the studio, but you can learn from the producer, from the engineer, from the assistant engineer, from everybody.
So, you were an artist for, I believe, a couple of years. You put out a couple albums
Yes.
and you loved it, but I know that eventually you went back to the studio. What did you miss about the studio that drew you back and took you out of the stage for a little bit?
Um, I think it was like 5 or 6 years that I was doing my artist gig, and I was promoting my albums and playing with my band. I really loved it, and I still love it. I mean, performing is amazing, but I
Mhm.
think that in one way, the part of being an artist where you're promoting, where you're doing all the things that you have to do that have nothing to do with music,
Yeah.
with creating music, but just promoting it, and that started to take a toll on me, especially, at that time. I would get some interviews that I would just get really stupid questions that had nothing to do with music and just had something, I mean, from really dumb questions like, oh, how do you like the girls? And what do you like? I mean, things like that, that, I mean, it's not that it's stupid talking about your life, but it has had nothing to do with music. So eventually things like that I started to get bored and I just wanted to be writing and creating. And on the other path, and I have to say, being an artist is extremely challenging, then it's extremely taxing. And even though I believe that I had a critical success, you know, and I really got great reviews of the work that I did, and that opened a lot of doors for me. Um,
Mhm.
I never managed to make a living out of singing, out of performing. So I was always, you know, doing the songwriting and everything that's just to earn my living.
Yeah.
So it different things that I just took me to the point where I said, you know, I just wanted to, you know, also go with the flow. And the flow was always in my songwriting, and people were very interested in me as a creative force
Yeah.
and helping them that. So I decided to take a break, and started writing. And then immediately, you know, I started getting into other projects, especially where I was very fortunate and very lucky was developing new artists.
Mhm.
And I think that's the best way where you can be creatively free, because nothing is written, right?
Yeah.
So you had everything to you have an open path. and and I started doing that, and then automatically, you know, things. I was happy. I was always writing. I was always, you know, programming, which I've always loved the programming aspect of creating music, and little by little, things just started happening. You know, it seems that I would just needed to do my work, and things happened. And
Yeah.
then eventually, I got an opportunity. I started producing a single here, a single there. I produced a couple of albums that did well, not extremely well. And then the first big break, and this is a funny story that there was a single artist signed to Sony Music, and there was another unsigned artist that
Mm.
they came together to write songs, great songwriters, and they started doing great work together. And then they invited me the A&R, which we had tried to work, but we've never managed to do anything together. He told me, well, this is an unsigned project, but I feel like you could do anything about it. So basically on spec. And so
Yeah.
I met the guys. I loved what they were doing. We connected personally, you know, our tastes in music, and we started working together. I still had my studio at home, you know, in my living room. I started working the demos. It took like 8 months to produce 10 songs. The A&R wanted me to invite different young producers, you know, to be
Yeah.
involved. And I invited everybody that I knew, and everybody had something else to do and was busy doing their own thing. And so I ended up little by little, you know, producing another song and then producing another song. And then eventually nobody could or would jump into this project on spec. I eventually did
Yeah.
the album. Sony puts it out, and 6 months later, that was the first Sin Bandera album. That at the time, you know, there were rough times for music in like the early 2000s, and we sold like over 1 million copies. We, you know, there was a mix of R&B with programming that at the time it was nothing that you could hear on radio. So it had that newness aspect of it, and then eventually that changed my life and changed my career. Then that established me as a producer, which, you
Mm.
know, it was not a big project at the beginning. I invited everybody, nobody could do it, and then suddenly I ended up being the only producer on the album, and that really, you know, changed my path, and that's helped me to work with other new artists.
That's really interesting too, because it's like the fact that there was not so much pressure, right? It allowed you to be free, right, of kind of any modern or whatever was popular, and you kind of did something new,
Mhm.
and it turned out really well, right?
Well, we were going with what we love. I mean, I got to say those two guys are great artists, great songwriters. I'm a songwriter myself, so we kind of connected on that mode, right? So
Yeah.
I could help them, you know, restructure certain songs. and then it was, yeah, it was free to, let's try this, let's try that. I even remember one of the songs that ended up being one of the big singles. It had kind of like a calypso Caribbean vibe that at the time, again, it was, the company was telling me, that's really weird, do you guys really want to do that? And we said, like, listen, you have your ballads, you have this, you have that, let's just have that one song. And then that one song that's called Sirena ended up, being like a huge hit. So it was, we were following what we love, and we were following music. We didn't have the hit formula, and we're not thinking about being successful. We were thinking about doing a great album, and we were passionate about that. Then on the second album, everything changed, because now you're successful. The record company, that was their only or biggest seller in that year. And then the second album, it was so difficult because everybody wanted to have an opinion on the album, and then everybody knew what we needed to do next, and that made it such a harder process to work with. But we stuck to our guns, and I got to give it, the artists stuck to their guns and defended with me what we wanted to do, and the way we thought things should evolve, because we wanted to evolve. And fortunately, we continued the success of the project. But it was like night and day, from like doing an album on your own to like even the janitor from the record company what had to say in what needed to be done.
Oh my, yeah. There was, I'm sure there was more pressure. So we have a question from the chat.
Sure.
By Adrian. He says, how do you separate the goals of each role? So producer, composer, arranger, artist. Wearing, I'm assuming he means, wearing so many different hats. Like, how do you know when to delegate, when you should just be the writer, maybe, how do you separate that?
I mean, nowadays it's all mixed in, but I guess that I would say that on some projects, I would honestly feel that I have great ideas to contribute, but might be the best person to execute them. So I would put myself in the role that I feel more comfortable, instead of thinking which is the best role or the most important role, or the role that I need to be in. I would say that I would choose a role where I feel more comfortable, and where I think that my contribution is going to be is going to serve best the project. So sometimes that might be the as a songwriter, and again, I still do it. Sometimes I like an artist, and they might not be thinking of me as a producer, but I might just knock on the door, or they might knock on my door just to sit down and write. I mean, there was an artist that actually, called me and said, "I want to do sessions with you." I said, "Okay, this is great. This is the door for me to produce her, because I loved her work." And so she came to the studio. We spent 5 days inside the studio writing, creating. We did demos, and I really thought that I was going to produce at least a few of their albums. And she recorded 5 of the songs that we wrote together, and I produced none. and I'm gonna say that it caught me by surprise, but at the end of the day, it was a great experience to write with her, and my role for her and for that album at that time was to be a songwriter. So I guess that being really honest with yourself, and knowing your collaborators and where do you fit best.
Yeah. That's actually really like a nice transition, because I know, this is called In the Studio, and for me it's definitely something that people don't know until they're in the studio, in those big scary studio settings, like collaborating. It's not as easy as it looks in like the cool movies and stuff. Like, how do you go on about collaborating? Let's say, how do you start a song with a person that maybe you've never met?
Well, if I don't know them, I always come prepared in the way that I always come with an idea or several ideas. I mean, I started as a songwriter with my head. My first songs I wrote in my head. I didn't have an instrument. I just, I wrote the melody and the lyrics, and obviously the melody I knew that had the harmonic structure. So I started from that to sitting on the piano or sitting on the guitar. And to me, writing a song on the piano, writing a song on the guitar are like very different.
Yeah.
They take you to very different paths. And then also I've done, you know, the let's start with a loop and
Yeah.
or with a vibe and then just build upon that. So it depending on, I mean, from the info that I have on if it's just a songwriter, kind of like know what type of songwriter is. So
Yeah.
understand how can we collaborate and we can, you know, do a yin yang of really best of both worlds. And so I come prepared with melodic ideas or just song ideas of what do I want to talk about and put them on the table. So we have a starting so we don't really start from 0, 0. So like, okay, now that we do, what do we do? And then it's not perhaps my idea or where we start off, it doesn't even take us anywhere, but it takes us to a path of creativity.
Yeah.
And that would be like my main goal. If I'm writing with an artist, with an artist that's a songwriter as well, then I try to understand, you know, if they have a musical background, what have they done, you know, where I try to study a little bit and try to have an image of what do I think they could do next, you know, or how we can expand what they've done. So I do that homework, and also I come with certain ideas that I propose, and then, you know, whatever connects with that artist songwriter, then we follow that path. But again, uh, always open of not thinking that my ideas are the best ideas, or that I need to have 50, you know, contribute to 50% or 80% or 20%. I just let the creativity flow, and if one idea of mine sparks 10 of the other person, then, you know, it's all worth it. That's how I approach it, I guess.
Did you speaking of that, like did you ever have that when you're starting out and when you're just working with people, you know, sometimes it's hard when you get married to your ideas, you know, that happens a lot. People have demoitis. Like, did you ever have that towards the beginning, and maybe how did you kind of get out of that?
Well, I learned the hard way. Of course, I had demoitis, and of course, I had very specific ideas of how I wanted things to sound,
Yeah.
and I still carry that frame of mind up to today. What I've learned is that there's many ways a song can be developed, and not only my way. And I learned the hard way, you know, sometimes of just maybe sticking too much on my ideas that they didn't go anywhere, or they
Mm,
didn't help the flow of the session. And I guess that little by little I just learned to listen to other people and tried ideas. And I guess that what you need to do is let music speak for itself. So if there's an idea, the best way to know if it works or not is try it.
yeah.
And you know, if it's songwriting idea, then let's just go that way and see if it leads us somewhere. If it's an arrangement idea or it's a groove idea, we just have to let the music speak. You know, we cannot talk about music intellectually. And I think that that's where a lot of us get you know, cornered in, that we have this idea and it's intellectual, and we
Yeah.
don't let ourselves just listen to, okay, let's see how it sounds this way or that way. And so little by little making mistakes, understanding that I was being too stubborn, you know, and that I was not helping the session. Helped me understand that there's, you know, that there's other paths, and that I'm contributing, you know, even though where I might be the producer and I have the responsibility of the project, but that doesn't mean that my ideas are the best or the only ideas.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit too about your production. I know, you know, especially when you get into the big time, the big labels with the big artists, and there's pressure, right? There's more pressure. You're in the studio, you're writing a song. How do you approach a song? So you start writing something, you have a loop, you have an idea, and the idea is flowing, right? The song is getting written. Now it's time to produce it. How do you kind of approach that? This could be, you can answer this 100 different ways. I think of the drums, I think of the arrangement. How do you just start going right there?
Um, Well, especially nowadays, it depends on how the song is structured, because nowadays some songs are structured so linked to the loop or the vibe or the track that was written on, that it's hard to take them away from that. But I'm since I'm a drummer originally, I'm very focused on groove and how the song flows, and so that has to do with tempo. And so I always and that keeps happening. You know, it's always like tempo. It's very important to me to get the energy and the vibe, the correct vibe for the song. And even like a 2 BPM difference can really make a big difference. And obviously, if you're talking about 5, 8, or 10 BPM, then it's the song transforms completely. Yeah. It's like a completely different song. So I always have that in consideration in mind. You know, the tempo and the groove of how the song flows. You know, and how the melody just like kind of like goes automatically and rides kind of like rides the wave in a nice way. So once I have that, I, you know, if structure is not definite, I try to figure out the structure where the song has the best flow, and that's a continuation of the tempo or of the groove. So it's about the flow and always keeping me interested, and not having too little or too much to add to the song. And I guess that nowadays I start with the approach of like less is more. You know, the most important thing is to have a great melody, to have a great story to tell, and to have something where you connect more. I say it more in a when a song moves you more than a song that you get that it gets repetitive and then you learn it in 5 seconds. That's a completely different story. I'm talking about a song that really gets into you, and you know, you connect with the story, you relate to. So I try to add the elements that add to that story, that add to what the song is talking about. And so, you know, when it just feels right, then I always try to not overproduce. I guess that as most of us have overproduced, you know, sometimes. And so you learn that sometimes a song just needs a guitar and a great vocal, and sometimes it needs, you know, a full band with an orchestra, and sometimes it needs like amazing hills and valleys. So each song is different. So we can't approach every song the same way. And I say because nowadays, unfortunately, specifically in top 40 music and you know what it's on the radio, everything kind of like starts to sound the same, because it's the same formula of like, now it's like almost no intro, just go straight to the hook, and then it's not. Then that's kind of, we're doing a jingle more than songs, right? We're not telling a story. We're just thinking of ear candy, how we can get the audience to get hooked. Which it's not that that's bad, but that's not really what we do. We're songwriters. We're not jingle writers, and it's a different. And I'm not putting down that jingle writing is amazing, but it's a different thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think that each song deserves to have their own story be told musically as well. And as a creator, as a producer, arranger, songwriter, however you want to call yourself, just having a blank page and being able to really create something that has no reference to anything, or has 1,000 references that you kind of like you know, make it into something new. That's the beauty of the path that we do, and that's the amazing journey of creation and creativity.
I think that's such an asset too, that you're a songwriter as well as a producer. So you know that when it comes to producing a song, it's about doing what's best for the song, right? It's like you said, not overproducing it. You know, if the song is good, the song is going to be good, and not overdoing it. So we have about 5 minutes left. I wanted to ask you something. 4 questions. The first one is, what's one of the most notable things that maybe you learned from collaborating with someone you admire, anything that sticks with you to this day that you hear in your head every day whenever you're in the studio?
I guess that we've already discussed this. Really have listen to people and try things out. Not be afraid try things out and not be afraid to try it and have it fail, and not being afraid to let your collaborator's idea be the better idea for the track that you're doing or for the album that you're doing. And that's always that I try to come into the studio, you know, with an open mind, and to have fun and enjoy the ride. If we enjoy the ride of writing the song, and if we fall in love with the song, then most likely a lot of people will fall in love with the song.
Yeah, awesome. And now I wanted to ask you a little bit of a philosophical question. 3 tips that you would give your younger self, like right when you're starting out, before or after Berkeley, 3 things that you think you wish you knew back then.
Um, I guess one is just like really follow your gut. I think that I might have doubted myself a little too much in an unhealthy way, on like, what do I want to do, and you know, and just try to just follow your inner voice and what you're passionate about. At least start on that path. You know, don't doubt it, and just go for it. Another one, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Just put yourself out there. And I say that because we are on our own vehicle, right? And if you want to say it this way, we are our own product, and that can be challenging because it's what you do. And don't take things personal. You know, I think I took a lot of things personal too many times. So if they don't like your song, they don't like your song. If they say that your voice is not good, well, it's your voice is not good. It's not you, you know, and it's not personal. It's just a critique on things that you do, but it's not about you, and it's their perspective, you know. So learn from anything. Don't take anything personal.
Nice. Cool. Last one. So basically, I guess that's kind of, we're wrapping up. Last question I guess I could throw your way is writer's block. We all love it and hate it. What do you do?
I mean, in a major writer's block, there's a book that I used to a while back. It's called The Artist's Way. That
Mhm.
it's a great book to kind of like open yourself up. But sometimes, and that's like very constant, just step away from it. You know, sometimes when an idea is not coming, it's not coming, and sometimes you need to step back, maybe go and do something, you know, work on something else, or maybe just go out and take a walk, you know, and just go out and listen to I love to go out to, you know, to the streets or wherever I'm at, just close my eyes and listen to the 360 audio that's happening around me, and all the music that the birds, the trees, the planes, the city makes, and that kind of like puts me in a different frame of mind. It's a sensory experience that is amazing, but also, you know, it helps me relax and helps me, you know, not get attached to anything, and just separate from that idea, and the ideas will come. Sometimes you can't force them, as the same as a lot of songs happen and come in like 3 minutes, and which I've experienced a lot, which is like I start with a melody and just like boom, 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 it kind of like writes itself out, and I don't even have to think about it. Sometimes it doesn't happen that way. So just, you know, don't be so hard on yourself. Take a step back and then come back to it. And sometimes you have a great verse that it's going to be a great verse for another song that you're going to write like in 2 weeks, you know, or in 3 weeks. So sometimes that happens. And always try out your ideas. Sometimes you write the best song in the world, and sometimes you write the worst song in the world, and it's okay, because it's all in the process. I don't think that you can write a great song without writing the previous, you know, middle of the road songs. It's like a muscle. Creativity is a muscle, so you have to work on it.
Well, Auro, thank you so much. We've run out of time. This has been awesome. I really hope everyone learned something or got something out of this. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here. And I hope the rest of you guys enjoyed this.
Thank you so much, and thanks everybody for tuning in. It's been a pleasure.